Greetings to all my lecturers and fellow friends. I am Nurhandani binti Aziz Fendi and my metric number is A174195. Today I am going to present to you my final year project entitled Stature Estimation based on arm measurements in UKM Bangi community. What I am going to cover in this video is introduction, research objectives, methodology, result, conclusion and references I use. First, let's take a look into the introduction. Stature is one component of an individual's physiognomy and one of the other aspects that can help with identification. In cases where the corpse has been extensively disfigured or is only represented by skeletal remains, the individual's stature can be approximated using skeletal measurements in certain cases following appropriate maceration at a forensic laboratory. The biological profile estimation of unidentified skeletal remains is an important part of the anthropology examination, especially to identify the owner of the skeletal remains. The profiling is used to look for missing people who may be related to the victim. The individual biological profiles such as sex, ancestry, stature, and the age of death necessitate dependable procedures to assure proper documentation of these biological indicators. Postmortem discoveries are compared to antemortem records such as fingerprints, radiography, and DNA profiles in modern forensic identification. Thus, a forensic anthropologist must do a biological profile on highly degraded or skeletonized remains for identification. Stature estimation is useful not only in biological profiling to narrow down the victims, but also to determine the individual's demographics as it influences the skeletal characteristics of certain population. While not all bones are suitable for estimating stature, the bones that are suitable are long bones from the upper extremity or lower extremity. The bone used in this study is radius bones, which is at our forearm. Later I will explain further on how to measure radius in living people. As for the general objective is to estimate the stature of an individual based on the arm measurements in UKM Bangi community, while my specific objective is to obtain a regression formula for both male and female individually. Moving on to the methodology, first it must be highlighted that not everyone is suitable for this study. Thus, the inclusion criteria include subjects whose ages range from 21 years old to 32 years old regardless of sex and race, and must not have undergone any surgery on their bones or have a medical history related to bones such as broken bones and osteoporosis, whereas the exclusion criteria include anyone who has medical history such as broken bones and osteoporosis. As for the subjects were randomly selected in UKM Bangi campus. Data collected were taken based on the landmarks and procedures taken by the researchers before. And the measurements were made on the body surface based on anatomical landmarks by measuring tape, ruler, and calipers. Two parameters taken is the height measurements and the arm measurements. As for the height measurements, the stature was measured from the vertex to the floor. The subject's stature was measured by making the subject stand erect and barefooted with the heels in close contact with each other in anatomical position. The subjects must stand tall and upright with their backs as straight as possible by relaxing the shoulders with the shoulder blocks and buttocks touching the vertical plane. The head was oriented in the Frankfurt horizontal plane and the tip of the pinna were in a horizontal plane parallel to that of the feet. An anthropometer with one arm sliding against the vertical plane was brought down onto the subject's head, and the statue was rid of the scale vertical plane. As for the arm measurements, the subject must place both arm palms up at 90-degree angle to avoid pronation and allow access to all palpable landmarks. A measurement tape was placed on the most proximal point of the head of the radius to the tip of the lateral styloid. And then the data were then collected and subjected to statistics like mean distribution, central tendencies, standard deviations, and presence correlation coefficient. It is important to underline that the researchers have excluded from the data analysis is the individuals with physical deformities as well as those without informed consent. First, I'm going to present the result for both the gender. Based on the Shapiro test I did, I got the value of 0.0494 arm measurements, while I got 0.365 for the height measurements. Since the value for arm measurement is less than 0.05, the data significantly deviate from normal distribution. Thus, the correlation test I use is Spearman test. The result I got from Spearman test is 0.823 for arm and 1.000 for the height. From this test, I figured that my data are positively correlated with each other. In order to get the regression equation, I use Excel sheet to get the scatter plot first. After data input, I uncover the equation based on the scatter plot obtained, and the result is shown as in the slides. Next is the results for male only. Based on the Shapiro test I did, I got the value of 0.126 for arm measurements, while I got 0.033 for the height measurements. Since the value for height measurements is less than 0.05, the data significantly divide from normal distribution. Thus, the correlation test I use is Spearman test. The result I got from Spearman test is 0.691 for arm and 1.000 for the height. From this test, I figured that my data are positively correlated with each other. Just like before, in order to get the regression equation, I use Excel sheet to get the scatter plot first. After data input, I uncover the equation based on the scatter plot obtained, and the result is shown as in the slides. Lastly is the result for female only. Based on the Shapiro test I did, I got the value of 0.290 for arm measurements, while I got 0.283 for the height measurements. Since both value more than 0.05, the data showed normal distribution. Thus, I used a Pearson correlation test that I got 0.708 for arm measurements and 1.000 for height measurements. From this test, I figured that my data are positively correlated with each other. Just like before, in order to get the regression equation, I use Excel sheet to get the scatter plot first. After data input, I uncover the equation based on the scatter plot obtained, and the result is shown as in the slides. As conclusion, from the test run and the result obtained, the arm measurements are positively correlate with the height measurements. Thus, one regression equation can be used to estimate the measurements, either one needed. Stature can be estimated using the regression equation for both the gender, which is y equals to 4.3268x plus 53.534. For male only is y equals to 3.496 x plus 77.821, and for female only is y equals to 2.8893 x plus 86.911. These are the references I use, and that is all from me. Thank you.